Hi you guys, it's Nikita Lene back with another video. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the pros and the cons of taking a crisis job. And this is kind of based off of, for most of you, you already know, I just finished taking my very first travel job, which was also a crisis job. So I just kind of want to talk to you guys about the pros and cons, be upfront and honest. If any of you are thinking about taking one of these jobs, if you have already worked a crisis job, kind of drop your comments below. Let me know some of your pros and cons and what you dealt with during your time. So if you're interested in watching, stay tuned. All right, so first of all, let's start with some of the cons. So straight up, I'll be completely honest with you guys and completely as transparent, sorry, random piece of hair, as transparent as I can be about these. Some of them may even be just specific to the company that I took my job with. So I will kind of like throw that caveat in there and kind of let you guys know that every travel company is different as far as their rules and their regulations and what they require of you. So I'll kind of mention some of those along the way as well. So let's jump in. All right, so number one con, which I guess if you, depending on your attitude or personality, it could be a pro, but this job is going to get you out of your comfort zone. When you are working a crisis job, one of the first things that they tell you is you are here to help, period. They may have you working in a different specialty or a different department than you're used to, and you got to learn how to roll with the punches. So, along with that comes with kind of some growing pains, kind of some days that are not going to be comfortable. Some days you're going to be irritated. You may have a perfect assignment for 2-3 days in a row, and you come in on your 4th day and you're working in a new unit, and your 5th day could be a whole nother unit. There's a plenty of days where I worked ICU one day, CVICU the next day, the ED the next day, step down the day after that. You work everywhere. You work wherever they send you. So that's part of being out of your comfort zone. You're also, on top of all of that, you're working longer hours than usual. You're not in your normal home environment. You're away from home. You're away from your family. So all of those things are going to take you out of your element. And it's not really like most things where it's like 1 or 2 things that are different. It's a complete change of your entire life, your lifestyle, your career. So it's a lot of change at once. So if you like change, you know, it's great. Sometimes after a little while, it can be a little exhausting. So you really just have to learn how to adapt and to have some really good coping mechanisms to get through this, you know, assignment, should you choose to take it. The next con was a big one for me because I worked night shift, and that is hotel life. Now, once again, the hotel portion can be a pro or a con, depending on how you look at it. It is convenient at times, but working night shift and being in a hotel, nobody cares. Nobody cares that you are on night shift. There is no consideration whatsoever. Housekeeping is banging on doors and running the vacuum. There's kids running up and down the hallways. You have people in and out all day long. They are super loud and inconsiderate because if you think about it, they aren't really thinking about there could possibly be a nurse who works night shift who needs to be asleep. They don't really think about that. One thing I guess I would suggest is to get a sign to put outside of your door. My friend, she came prepared. She actually had her sign. I myself had to make a ghetto sign, but I wrote, you know, nurse sleeping, please be quiet, or please be considerate, something to that effect, and put it outside of my door. It did help a little bit, but you're still going to get a lot of noise. That's just hotel living. So once again, that's another con of this job. The next con is, I guess, one thing that may be specific to the company that I worked for, but we were not allowed to have visitors. You're not allowed to have your friends or your family come visit you, primarily because you're working with COVID patients 6 days a week. They want to decrease the amount of the spread, and they do that by telling you you cannot have visitors at the hotels. And also they really want you to decontaminate yourself, even if you have to go run to the store, to Walmart, or to go get food or whatever you do. So, I mean, there's reason behind it, but it does get kind of lonely. It is kind of difficult being away from your family. And if your family is within an area where they can come visit, to not be able to have them come visit kind of sucks. Of course, there are ways around that. If you really feel comfortable, you really want to see your family, then you can. But it does get kind of lonely being away from your family. This, for me, was not my first time away from my son, but this was by far the longest time I've ever been away from him. When I was in the military, I had previous TDYs where I would have to leave to go to another city, state, or country even, to do training for my job. And so I think the longest I had ever been away from him was my TDY to Italy, which was 11 days. So this one was exceptionally long for me. And so it was kind of tough. Once again, your coping mechanisms, you have to figure out how you're going to cope and how you're going to adapt while you're there to kind of fit into making a new normal lifestyle for yourself. So yeah. The fourth con is going to be your hours. Once again, I have seen a lot more of these crisis jobs where they are kind of more accommodating. You can work as little as 4 days a week, but my particular company that I worked for, we worked 6 days a week. Yeah, 6. That's 6 12-hour shifts a week. My day off was Wednesdays, and you never realize how exhausting a 12-hour shift is until you do 6 of them in a row. And when I tell you, it's a whole different type of tired. When you get to that 6th day, you are so exhausted. All you want to do is sleep. And that is exactly what I did. I really wanted to record YouTube videos for you guys. I had so much awesome content I wanted to create. I really wanted to work on different things, but most of the time when Wednesday came, all I really wanted to do was sleep. Not even eat, not even run errands. I just wanted to sleep. So those hours are absolutely exhausting. I would say if you're willing to take a job, you really want to do a crisis job, but you don't want to work 6 days a week, you want to just do 4 days or 3 days, you could definitely look for those jobs. Those jobs are out there. But obviously, if you kind of weigh out the money, how much money you want to make, the jobs that do the 6 days a week are obviously going to pay more because they're paying by the hour. So you really have to kind of pick and choose for yourself. Do you want to work over a longer period of time and only work 4 days a week? Or do you want to work your 6 days a week and just do 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever accommodates you, your schedule, your budget, and what you're trying to accomplish? But I will tell you, those 6 days a week are exhausting. It is not for the weak. The 5th con is it is tough work. When you show up for these crisis jobs, they expect you to work, honey. They make you put in work. So just come mentally and physically prepared to put in the work. And I don't really know. There's not much more to say about that. Just come prepared to work. Whatever you have to do to mentally and physically prepare yourself for that. You know, maybe making sure that you rest, making sure that you have a routine, or that your hotel room or your Airbnb, wherever you're staying, is organized. You have healthy meals and snacks and things like that. Whatever it is that you feel you need to be fueled and energized and ready to go, you have to make sure that you have that, because when you get there, it's boots on the ground. You got to be ready to work, and pretty much from day one. So I always advise people, just make sure that you're mentally and physically prepared to work hard. So the last con that I have listed is kind of a heavy one, and it would be death. Now, if you work in the healthcare field, you are not a stranger to death. Most of us deal with it in some shape or fashion. For me, I previously worked in long-term acute care, but it was still acute care. So I did deal with a lot of death in that setting. I recognize it does take a toll on you physically and emotionally. But in this setting, during this crisis job and during this pandemic, there was a lot more death than I'm used to. So, once again, it's one of those things that we deal with in healthcare, and you definitely have to go in, once again, mentally and physically prepared for that. You have to know what your coping mechanisms are and have them set, because you're going to deal with a lot more death than you're used to. So I guess that, especially if you're dealing with, I guess, ICU setting. Maybe if you work in other clinics, I'm not really sure how med-surg and other clinics are, but in the critical care setting, in the ICU, we see a lot more death. So I have a separate video that I'm going to be making that's going to be coming out probably a couple days after you see this one, but I'm going to kind of talk about death and how to deal with it and positive coping mechanisms to deal with death, because it is something that takes an adjustment. Working in the healthcare setting and dealing with this pandemic and seeing a lot more of it. All right, so we're finally at the pros. So number one pro of taking a crisis job is, at least once again for the company I worked for, you go home whenever you're ready. So our job, they wanted us to stay for at least 2 to 3 weeks minimum, because they have to replace you when you leave. So they like to have a little bit of continuity and a little bit of forewarning before you leave, so they can already have a nurse lined up to fill your position. But it's a pretty open-ended contract. And so if you've seen my previous video about my job that I took, you'll know I went there with the mindset of, I'm going to be here for 3 weeks. I'm going to work my butt off for 3 weeks, and then I'm going to go home. But I ended up really enjoying it. I was learning a lot and really thriving, and I ended up staying for 10 weeks, you guys. 10 weeks. But there are some nurses that came and they were there for exactly 2 weeks and they went home. Some nurses, one of the nurses I actually got there with is still there. So I guess technically this is what, like 15 weeks for her? That's a long time, you guys. That's a really long time, especially working 6 days a week. But I loved the flexibility of being able to come and go whenever you're ready, staying as long as you want without having to do like extension paperwork and seeing, oh, is there still a spot for me? So that's a definite pro for me. The next pro is networking and meeting new people. I absolutely love networking. I love meeting new people. So this was a really great experience for me, because not only was I the new nurse on the block in my assigned department, which was the ICU, but I got to float to other units. Once again, which that could be a pro or a con depending on how you look at it. But I love floating to some of the other units because I got to meet new people in those units. And networking for me, as a nurse, as a healthcare worker, as an entrepreneur, I love meeting other healthcare workers. And so I worked in like 5-6 different departments. You work on different days and you get to meet different people, not just on your shift, but during the transition between days and nights, you'll meet new nurses and other healthcare workers. So I thoroughly enjoyed that portion of it. I will say I met some absolutely amazing people during my time in Paris, and some of them, you end up being Facebook friends with, or you share your Instagram with, and it's just been a great experience. So I'm really excited about that part. That was a definite pro for me. So the next pro for me is learning. I learned so much in this job. It was a phenomenal learning experience. Not only going from working in a LTAC ICU into an acute care ICU, but also, this was my first time working with COVID patients. Now, at my previous job, I had like a smaller selection. Like we only had like maybe 4 or 5 COVID patients. And most of them were considered post-COVID patients. So it's kind of like when they're no longer testing positive for COVID, but you're kind of dealing with the aftermath of the long-term effects of COVID and the respiratory failure portion of it. So I learned a lot on the acute care end of it, especially since I got to float to other units. I took care of a lot of the patients in the ED, and then sometimes they would bring me back to ICU. So it was really great to see the entire process of this patient just checked in the ED, and triaging and seeing them, taking care of them in the ED, taking all their labs and x-rays and all that good stuff. And then, you know, watching the entire process from beginning to end. So that part was really rewarding, and I just learned so much that I tucked into my nursing toolbox, and I feel like it made me a better nurse overall. So that was a definite pro for me. I feel like a stronger nurse now. I feel like I have so many skills that I picked up, and it really prepared me for my next assignment. So that's, I guess, one of my favorite, well, not my absolute favorite, but one of my top pros from this job. All right, so the next pro is the pay. I mean, if you have looked into a crisis job, I'm sure you have seen the pay and been like, ooh, that's a nice chunk of money, right? So crisis pay is crisis pay for a reason. They're gonna work you for that money, sweetheart. You are going to put in work. Like I said, we worked 6/12s a week, so it was a lot of work. But at the end, I felt like it was worth it. Additionally, when it comes to crisis pay, some jobs, they allow you to work, like I said before, the 4 days a week, 6 days a week. So you kind of got to figure out what works for you. If you are going in with a financial goal of how much you want to save, that's really good. That'll help you kind of make a decision of which crisis job you want to take. All of them pay different according to where you are, what your hours are that you're working. Also, some of them pay more for the department that you are working in. So look into all of that and decide which one is best for you. If you really are going in for, you know, financially, you have a financial goal, then set that goal, because it may be if that's your reason, then that may be your reminder every day, like, ooh, I am exhausted, but I want to pay my car off, but I want to pay my student loans off. So I'm going to stick it out these next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long you decide to stay. I know for me, sometimes I was exhausted, I was tired, and I was ready to go home, but I remembered myself. I had a financial goal that I wanted to set. I wanted to have money to invest. I wanted to work on different projects. So I really reminded myself of that. There are some days I had to open my notebook, look at my budget, and say, whew, okay, well, I'm stuck here. I'm not necessarily stuck, but I need to stay here for myself to meet my financial goals an additional 2 weeks. So I'm going to stick out these last 2 weeks. Because I was tired. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. If you guys saw me those last couple days, I looked rough. I felt exhausted. I was a whole hot mess because I was putting in that work. On top of that, working nights, on top of all the other cons I talked to you guys about, like living in a hotel where it's loud, it's not the best sleeping environment. So I really had to remind myself, okay, you have financial goals set. Financial freedom is your goal. You want to have X amount of dollars saved. You want to pay this off. You want to do this. We're going to work for it. And every single day I worked for that. Additionally, there are going to be people who try and, I don't know, money shame you. I don't know what it's called, but some people will try and make you feel guilty for taking this job. Like, oh, all you care about is the money, or the money is not worth it, or whatever the case may be. Do what works best for you and your goals, your financial goals. There's a lot of people who try and nitpick and criticize you, but at the end of the day, every single penny you earn on this crisis job is your money. You are going to earn it, honey. You are going to work your butt off for it. So don't let anybody make you feel guilty for taking this job for whatever your financial reasons are, whatever your budget is, whatever your goal is, or making you feel guilty for splurging or spending your money on however you choose to spend it when you make it. Because I'm telling you, emotionally, physically, you are going to go through it. You're going to work, you're going to miss your family, but you're going to earn every single penny. So spend it how you want to, invest it how you want to, do whatever you want to do, and don't let people shame you for it, because you earned it. Okay, so on to the next one. All right, so we're finally at number one, my number one pro of taking this crisis job. Now, as nurses, it can be super easy to get caught up in the monotony of your job as a nurse. You go in, you're used to just getting a report, doing your job, and it can just seem like Groundhog's Day at times. You're treating the same patients with the same patient demographic and the same diagnoses and the same medications, and it just seems like the same thing constantly. And it's very easy to kind of question, like, am I making a difference? Is what I'm doing making a difference in my patients' lives? I know for me this was very hard, especially working in long-term acute care. Although I did work in the ICU, it's very hard to really see that what you're doing is making a difference. And so it's really easy to get caught up in the monotony of your day-to-day job and to not really see the impact of what you're doing. So for me, it was a great transition to go from long-term acute care into acute care, where some of these patients I would float and I would be in the ED. When they come into the ED, they get triaged, they're seen, they get to the ICU, and sometimes I'd be their nurse in the ICU that same day or the next day. And so to be able to see that transition, to see them going from being intubated to, you know, they're getting better and they get extubated and they're on BiPAP or they're on nasal cannula, and then they get transferred to the step-down unit or med-surg. That to me it's very rewarding to see that all of our hard work as a team is really making a difference. And the medications you're giving and these interventions, and I'll be honest, some days you're doing research, you're online and you're trying to figure out, you know, these are the orders that the doctor put in, but is there anything else that I can suggest? Is there anything else we can try? And to see, you know, to see these patients get better, it's very rewarding. And even for some of your patients are not going to make it, like, period. But to sometimes it's just the fact that you're able to extend their life long enough for their families to come to say goodbye to them. It's the unfortunate part of it. But for the COVID patients, it's tough because their family members cannot come in there and hug them and touch them and hold them and say goodbye to them. But for us, we had like these windows. So for the family members to be able to come to the window to look through and to see their family member before they take their last breath. Or for the patients who are not COVID patients, for their family members to come in and visit them and touch them and hold their hand and say goodbye to them. Sometimes that's all you can do, but it's overall, it just kind of solidified, okay, I'm in the right place. I'm doing my God-given mission here on earth. This is what I'm here for. It really made my heart smile because I really felt like I was doing the right thing. I felt like this is what the feeling that I was looking for when I'm like, should I do nursing? Should I not do nursing? Or even since I've become a nurse, we all have those days where it's like, why? Why did I decide to become a nurse? Because you have those shifts that are going to just rock your world. Or like I said, you're just stuck in the monotony where you're not feeling it. You're not happy with your career choice and you're really wondering, is nursing for me anymore? This job just kind of rekindled my love for nursing. It reminded me that I'm in the right place at the right time, and that once again, it just made my heart smile. It just reminded me of my purpose here on earth. And it was a good feeling. It was a really good feeling to be doing what I love and to do it in an environment that was so nurturing to me as a nurse, where I was able to learn. I was able to ask questions without the nasty judgment that you sometimes get. I think we as nurses, we've all had those experiences where you ask simple questions and you just get attitude, or you're just in an environment where you don't feel like you can ask questions, or you don't feel like you are appreciated, or you don't feel like you're learning and growing. And so to be in a nurturing environment, it was a good feeling. Like, everything really came together for this assignment, and I felt like it just felt good. It was really good for my soul. It was really good for me as a person, as a nurse, physically, financially, spiritually, mentally. I grew in all facets of life during this assignment. So I would definitely say, if you are interested in taking a crisis job, look at some of the pros and the cons that I've laid out for you. Watch more videos, do your research, figure out what works for you, what is going to meet your needs. Are you willing to get out of your comfort zone? Are you ready for that hard work? If you are, I'd say go for it. Once again, push come to shove, if you don't like it, you can always go back to doing whatever it was you were doing prior. So definitely take a look at it, look into it, and think about it, and see if it's possibly right for you. For all of my nurses who have taken a crisis job, comment down below. What are some of the pros and the cons that you experienced taking a crisis job? Would you take a crisis job again? And what are your recommendations for nurses that are considering taking a crisis job? And thanks again, as always, for watching, you guys. I really appreciate all the love and support that I've been receiving here on this channel, as well as my Life with Lene Instagram page, and also my New Nurse on the Block Instagram page. You guys have really been coming through during my time of my assignment, checking in on me, seeing how I'm doing, how it's going, and saying, hey, Nikita, what's up? What are you doing next? So I definitely appreciate that. And as always, thanks for watching, you guys, and stay tuned. I will have more videos for you soon. Have a good one.